My next guest on the good side is somebody that is not without controversy. He is actually an amazing, humble dad. He's just a really good dude that I have gotten the pleasure of getting to know. I have binged a lot of his content over the years, which I'll get into in this episode. But I want to say, too, with the controversy comes a little bit of, me just putting out there. I don't necessarily, just because I just sit back and ask questions. So it doesn't mean that I agree with everything he says. I agree with a lot of what he says, actually. But I just wanted to put that out there. I want you to take what he says in your own way, interpret it in your own way. Again, this is an interactive show, so please comment, like, engage with this, share it, do all the good things that help us, and in doing so you're going to be more likely to get some free merch. So we give free merch. We reward our top fans, the ones that comment, like, and share the most. We're going to reward you. So our next guest is a proud American husband, dad, and doctor. He's a serial entrepreneur and a professional speaker worldwide through physical practice and online platforms. He gets to help thousands of people all over the globe. Our next guest is Dr. Jason Dean. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of The Good Side. And I am super excited today because we have an incredible guest with us today that I have the good fortune of calling a friend, and that is Mr. Dr. Jason Dean. Jason Dean, how are we doing today, man?
I am good, buddy. I am so excited to be with you. You were for anybody that doesn't know out there, I followed you for a long time. You were like this legend up here, which you are. And so just to be with you is like the coolest thing in the world. And honestly, that beard is rocking.
Thanks, man. That's a winter beard. So that's funny you say that, because how I kind of got to know you is we'll get into your podcast here in a little bit, but I was like a deep binge listener of your podcast for a long time before I even kind of, made any effort to reach out to you. And I think, your name came up and I think you bought something from me, maybe a book or something. And I'm like, that's maybe a common name, Jason Dean. And then I looked further and I'm like, wait a minute. I recognized that email address and I was like, oh my gosh, he bought something of mine. This is amazing. So I had to reach out and tell you how awesome you were. I felt like I spent, 100 night evenings with you, just unwinding and listening to your awesome messages and all that. So I got to give it right back at you, man. You're the best, and I'm humbled and honored to have you on. So put that out there.
That's how I found out. That's how I got to YouTube, because I knew you from a long distance, obviously through Russell and all that stuff. And then I one day popped into my email list and I see Dana Derricks and I go, wait, I know that name. And then I go over to your page and I go, okay, I love his stuff. I'm gonna buy some because I think he's amazing, and he's opted into my stuff. And I go, okay, I'll stop at this dollar amount. And then I tripled my dollar because and at the end I'm like, I don't care. His stuff's amazing.
That's amazing, man. Well, thank you for that. And I think this is part of the fun, guys, of putting yourself out there and connecting with awesome people and going deep on their world. So I want to go deeper, and I'm excited to know more about you, man. So tell me a little bit more of where did you grow up? What was your childhood like?
My childhood was kind of messy. So I come from both sides of my family. I come from Native American background roots. Now, not that we were in a tribe or anything like that, but I'm in upstate New York, northeastern area. My parents divorced very young, and so I actually went with my mom for the most part, and I saw my dad on some weekends. Now my mom's side, pretty chaotic, just a rough family. I mean, good people, but a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol. My mom was an alcoholic. She used drugs. She's sober and clean now and born again and all that cool stuff. So she does great, and I have a good relationship with her. And then my dad's side, over there, a little bit more of kind of like the common, conservative family, grew up. Everything was pretty good and had awesome grandparents, things like that. And so I had that. But then growing up myself, I was with my mom most of the time, and we bounced around from place to place. I remember being in a couple different towns/cities. I was in a lot of different houses, an apartment here, a house there, staying in somebody else's house over there. So it was a bit stressful. Just because like when you're a kid, like kids really aren't supposed to go through that stuff. Plus, she was an alcoholic. She did drink. She kind of lived two lives. Like she was a great mom. She took care of me. But then she also lived this other life where she went to work like 3 jobs. We were on welfare a couple times. And so she did her best to like bust her butt to like provide, and she did. But then she had this other kind of alternative life where they kind of leaked into the regular life. There was like not necessarily drugs around the house, but like pot and stuff like that. But then there was lots of alcohol and stuff. And so it's actually shocking that I kind of went through and navigated that whole path, because I could easily be, and no one would have really cared necessarily. I could have easily turned into an alcoholic. I mean, I have uncles who committed suicide because of alcohol and drugs. And so somehow I was literally one of the only ones out of the entire giant family that navigated out of that whole kind of pain trauma situation growing up. So, but then I had that side, and I had my family side, my grandparents and my aunts and uncles who were like totally opposite. And I spent a lot of time with them. So it was kind of a back and forth type thing. But divorced parents, they're both married and doing great. And I'm good friends with them now. And obviously, they come over, eat dinner, we do holidays and stuff. So it's kind of really worked out. But there's a lot of lessons to learn kind of growing up. And, when you're young, I thank God for God, because that kind of that path of like, okay, keep the blinders on. There is so many times, Dana, that I could have totally just went a crazy way, and it would have just been considered, the average for the family. But instead, I went a totally different way. So it was rough, but it turned out pretty well.
Wow, that's awesome. So if I could narrow in a little bit more on, if you hear this crashing sound, sorry, it's snow falling off the roof here. It's not awesome. A boulder or something, but so if I could narrow in on a little bit of kind of your mom's struggle. So could you pinpoint, like, when was the divorce? Like what kind of, I guess, exasperated her issues when you were a kid from your perspective?
Yeah, so I know my grandmother on my mom's side, she had like 12 kids or something like that. And I think she raised a grand total of like about 20 between other families and neighborhood kids and stuff like that. And my grandmother was divorced, I think, or had probably about 3 or 4 different marriages. My mom's on her 4th, happy now, which is good. I think it was a combination of that. She hung around the wrong crowd at that point, because I know she started drinking and smoking like pretty early as like a teen. And then she met my dad, which she said was like the greatest thing in the world. But I think she got pregnant, or she had me at like 19 or something like that. So obviously it was very common back then, but she wasn't ready for it. And I know that mentally she wasn't, prepared, but also she came from a family that was very dysfunctional. I always find this interesting because I love meeting people who definitely don't have like quote unquote great backgrounds. Because when you actually talk to them and listen to them, you realize it was a choice here or there where a choice was made. They're not bad people. They just made a bad choice. And the next thing you know, you get into the wrong people, the choice gets multiplied, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So my mom didn't start off bad, just like I don't think a lot of people do. It was more of like maybe a poor choice here. She broke up with my dad. I remember I was probably only a couple of years old when that happened. And so I think she just got involved in a couple choices that just were not really good. Next thing you know, you're drinking away the quote unquote sorrows. You get around other people who are also drinking, drugs get involved. That's kind of how I looked at it from what she's told me, because obviously she's doing great now. But that's kind of what I recall of it. There's probably some more stuff behind the scenes that they never told me, just to kind of like protect me. But yeah, I think it was just a lot of choices. She told me that when she recovered and kind of gave her life back, going to church and following Christ, that she just had to like kind of strip everything away and just accept like, yes, she made bad choices. And that's what she always talked about. She goes, I worked on making better choices.
Sure. And you talked about sort of your path was sort of guided a little bit by God. And when were you introduced to God? When did you kind of let him in, and kind of where did that all start?
I grew up in a little community, like on a dirt road where everyone knew each other, whether it was family or friends. And I grew up in a non-denominational kind of it's called Countryside Christian Chapel. It's still there in a little town called Whitney Point, New York. Like I go back home and it's funny because I don't go to church in Florida because there's a lot of like craziness in Florida, like these big mega, and I'm like, not really my thing. But if I go back home, I go right there because it's a community. Like we focused on helping people, assisting people. So literally day one, I mean, I went through is it christening? They don't call that. It's not Christian. What do they call it? I was baptized.
Baptism.
As a baby. So it was just like part of my growing up. I was around that. And the pastor who baptized me literally just passed away probably about a year and a half ago. He also officiated my wedding down here in Florida.
Awesome.
Like, so he was a family pastor, but he was a family friend. So I was in it the whole time, but it was interesting because I went to college, did all the things I probably shouldn't have done. I wasn't horrible, but you go, you date a few girls, you go have a couple drinks, et cetera, things like that. I never got really bad because I always knew my mom's stuff in the background and I didn't really like it. So I stayed pretty calm compared to a lot of friends. And then I didn't like really go away from God. I was always there, but I'll tell you, I met my wife in 2005 and we both had the same mindset. And from a standpoint of when it was God, it wasn't necessarily having to go to church every Sunday. We never made a thing of that. It was more of how is your path being led, right? And it almost became more of I want my personal relationship with Christ, with God going forward, as in listen to the voice. Obviously we like to fellowship in groups, but listen to that voice. Like, what is the ethical thing to do? How should I be going about it? And you always get that, like that answer of what you need to do. And I'll tell you, as it's funny, I talk about this all the time because my show goes down some crazy rabbit holes, right? And sometimes I talk about some stuff that is very, very not offensive, but just like it's open-minded stuff. Like I chat about a lot of crazy, crazy things. And people ask me, they're like, you must not follow God. And I go, no, absolutely. It's opposite. The crazier I go, the more in touch I get with God today. Like I am closer today to God, to Christ than I've ever been in my entire life. But it's because I research so much. I want to know what's going on in the world, things like that. So I never really disconnected fully, because even when I was in college and I was like, not being the perfect person, I always had that little voice back there like, hey, you shouldn't do that. Hey, you shouldn't do that. And I would back off and be like, yeah, all right, that's kind of right thing. So I never really disconnected. I had to learn to truly connect and then actually like listen to the voice, but also live that life out, if that makes sense. And now today with my wife and I mean, it's very simple because every day we get to help people. It's all about, okay, hey, who can we help next? What way is our life being led? That kind of thing. So I find it easier today, but I am very thankful based on, especially the way I grew up. There's a lot of times I could have went way off the path and got really lost and may not have got to where I was today. I'm very thankful that voice and that I kind of call it a magnetism was there that kept me like on that narrow path, if that makes sense.
For sure. And did it just come natural to you to respect that voice, especially, when you're late teenager, early 20s, and you can it's not the cool thing culturally to let that good voice guide you. So how did you kind of let that prevail and win?
No, good question. So growing up, yeah, I definitely felt like I was probably more connected to it. Then my 20s into my early 30s, I wasn't disconnected, but you let the worldly stuff, come in. You let the going out, having fun, I used to work in like college football, NFL, et cetera. I used to go out and like party with the coaches and everybody else because it was just kind of part of the game. And so I was always connected, but I wasn't as connected. And then honestly, I met my wife, and my wife, now keep in mind, we're both chiropractors and we both do nutritional work, and we do something called muscle testing, which is it's kind of a magnetic, energetic type healing, similar to acupuncture and things like that. And when you dive into that world, especially from the chiropractic standpoint, we're old school chiropractic, like none of the medical things and stuff like that. You really have to kind of tune in to your intuition, which, really connects to that consciousness to like what is like the following Christ, following God. Like, so as I went into that, I didn't connect it to it really well in the beginning because I was like, I got too analytical. Like, and I still to this day get too analytical, and either I pull myself back or my wife's like, hey, like come back into the intuitive world, come back into that left brain, the creative, connect back to the source, et cetera. And so she helped me a lot. And then every day it's kind of really going, okay, I can think all day on this, but like, let's go back to that, like that center and the chest, to go back to that heart and go, okay, what am I being asked to do? And it's actually funny, kind of a Napoleon Hill type situation. One of the things that I do to kind of yank myself back in sometimes is because I'll get too, mental or in my head kind of thing of like analyze. Honestly, transparency. I'll be stand in the shower and go, okay, literally asking to myself or kind of out loud in the world, like kind of my way of praying is going, okay, what do you need me to do? Like, show me, and how can I be of service to others? Like, just show me how I can be of service to others, and then help me see it. Like, because sometimes when you get a little analytical, you miss things because you're not looking at it. So I have to ask, like, okay, don't let me miss it. Like tell me what I need to do to like see what you need me to do, and then how can I be of service to others and go above and beyond, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, and I'll add to that. I think that's such a good point, and we have to realize too, it's not very literal most times either. Right. So, and I think the most important part I've talked about this with others is what you do that seems routine to you is you ask. That's what many people just don't do, right? Like they fall short because I'm like, well, have you asked? They're like, oh no, what do we mean? I'm like, you need to ask. It says in the scripture you have to ask, right?
Yeah, I asked, like, it's so funny. I never, in the beginning when I was a kid, I would be like, God, I want blah blah blah. God, I want blah. But as I got older, I'm like, first of all, doesn't God actually know what you kind of want? I mean, isn't that part of the game? Is like he already knows where your heart is. So like, then I have to say, not like I want this, I want that, I want that. Like I really just like I've drowned myself in, okay, you have a path for me. Do me a favor, just help me to see it, and then show me where the service needs to be done, and I will just follow what you tell me to do.
That's awesome. So cool. Let me switch gears a little bit, and I got a question I got to ask. Very interested in your answer now that I know that you grew up in New York, actually. What is a food that you absolutely love?
My food. Oh, well, now it's like steak. It's just plain meat. I'm a carnivore guy. So and when I say carnivore, like I go full on carnivore, meaning like vegetables are worthless to me at this point. My wife still likes some, but I'm in the health space. I'm in the nutrition space. So I actually am in the carnivore world right now. So there's nothing better than a ribeye, man.
Amen.
Like ribeye, and then like I'll eat a ribeye and 6 eggs for like a meal, dude.
Yeah, and you feel great after.
Amazing. Anybody who is not, I mean, I do challenges just on the carnivore stuff, and people are like, that's crazy. I'm like, cut sugar out of your life and go carnivore, or at least carnivore keto. Watch your world change in 2 weeks to 30 days.
Absolutely. That's so good, man. Do you have a specific way you like to prepare your ribeye?
This is good. So I like it medium. Medium, sometimes a little towards the rare, depending on how high quality is. So we try to do grass-fed, organic as much as possible. However, I have a smoker grill, which is a Green Mountain grill, but I also have an Otto Wild grill. And if you don't know about the Otto Wild grill, do you know what that is?
I don't.
So Otto Wild grill it's a restaurant quality steak. Now, not saying that restaurants make steaks great, but a really high level restaurant. So what it has is it has two heating things at the top. It's flames. It's propane. And it heats up to 1,500 degrees. So you throw the steak in. You do, like, depending on the size of it, like I'll do an inch plus thick ribeye. You go like 2.5, 3 minutes on one side. You flip it 2.5, 3 minutes on the other side, and out comes a perfectly crusted medium ribeye steak.
Dude, you're making ribeyes like pizzas. That's amazing.
Yes, like you have it's like the Otto Wild. It's like $1,100, but like it's worth every penny.
Dang,
I want to take a quick second to talk about today's show sponsor. So first is the Therapy Farm. So therapyfarm.com is an online community that is bringing kids that are suffering with illnesses or ailments or just otherwise are struggling, and it connects them virtually to folks that own animals. And what happens is they'll have every week they'll get together and they'll spend some time digitally via a video chat. And what's really cool about it is it gives the child that maybe is going through an illness, even a terminal illness, or just is struggling developmentally or behaviorally, it gives them something to look forward to every single week, puts a smile on their face, and actually impacts the whole family in a really positive way. And it's 100% on the back of volunteers that volunteer time with their animals, and it's a really special place. So if you feel it on you to help kind of contribute to that cause, head over to therapyfarm.com. You can make a donation. You can volunteer yourself and your animal, or you can even nominate a child that you know that could use that free service. So 100% free service for kids, sick kids, struggling kids, to put a little special animal connection in their life. So go over to therapyfarm.com. The next sponsor I want to talk about is if you are ever in the need for apparel printing or accessories, hats, jackets, jerseys, sports team jerseys, work uniforms, corporate gifts, etc. Everything you can think of. My friends over at 1-800-T-Shirts would love to help you. And I've got a special deal if you go over to if you call 1-800-T-Shirts, tell them the Good Side sent you, or go over to 1-800-T-Shirts.com, use promo code Good Side, and they're going to give you a special deal and take good care of you. So 1-800-T-Shirts is a Midwest-based company. I know the founder personally. They're an amazing company, and they'll take really good care of you on your next T-shirt. This is more than T-shirts. It's everything. So apparel, you name it, they can take care of you. No orders too small, no orders too large. They can even set you up with an online store, which is what I use personally. It's amazing. They take care of everything. So go over to 1-800-T-Shirts, call 1-800-T-Shirts, or go to 1-800-T-Shirts.com and get all of your apparel and printing needs taken care of. So again, I want to thank the sponsors, therapyfarm.com, 1-800-T-Shirts.com, and here's the rest.
Every penny.
Dang, I'm gonna definitely that is epic. So good. Yeah, I would definitely share a meal with you anytime. By the way, guys, Dr. Dean's a very humble man, and I want to transition into why don't you talk about a little bit about what are kind of the sort of top life accomplishments that you've been able to achieve?
Well, I mean, it's going to sound like really, really kind of corny, but I think I'm the first person in my family to like stay married to the first person I married. I know that, and I'm probably not, because I know I have a couple uncles and aunts who like stayed, but given what I grew up around, and there's another God thing. I mean, I literally said, there was this girl in college that was, I thought she was Italian, but she was actually like Lebanese. And I said, she was really cute. And I was like, you know what? I want a Southern Italian girl. Like I said this when I was like a teenager. I got a Southern Italian girl. So like it was a big accomplishment to kind of like, I wrote out a dream in my head and I didn't even know that I was going to like hit the dream kind of thing. That's accomplishment. Becoming a doctor, obviously for a personal accomplishment, is good, which I like. I mean, it's a degree. I mean, I'm a doctor. I don't really look at it from a standpoint of most of the stuff I do in every day, I learned outside of school. So I mean, it's just a piece of paper, but the ability to achieve that after about 13 years of school it's a lot. You put a lot into it to get there. But other than that, I mean, it's really just running successful businesses, having our amazing daughter to be around us all the time. So she's homeschooled with us. She hangs out with us all day long. We've just built this world, and I always wanted to do this. I wanted to build my world the way I wanted it to. And so even the days I get frustrated and I call my friends and I'm like, this is terrible. Why is this happening? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like kind of, bitching and moaning. And they're like, and I have to step back and I go, my friend actually told me, go look up the word winning in the dictionary. I'm like, fine. So I go up, look, winning. And they're like, you're winning. I'm like, well, what about like, I made this mistake. You're winning. Like I go, but I want to win. And they go, there's no win. You're winning. Like that's what you're winning. You're winning or you can be losing. You're winning. And it was like such a like, boom, right in your face kind of winning. So my life is winning. I mean, mistakes are made all the time. Like, I screwed up and I lost this kind of money on like a bad deal over here, whatever, but winning. So, I mean, my every day is kind of that, if that makes sense.
That's totally awesome. I love that. I love the way that was described too. You're winning. You don't win because the game doesn't end. Yeah.
I know. I actually said that. I go, I want to win. And it was like you're in your headspace. Like I want to win. And not in like a greedy way. I just like, I want to win the game, right? And they're like, there is no win the game. It's you win, just winning every day. Winning, you're winning the game. You're helping people. You're making a difference.
Such a good point. And the game changes too.
That's right.
Like in a major, how old's your daughter now?
She's 9.
9? Okay, cool. So, I mean, 9 years ago, you can think back to how your game changed, right?
Yeah. Oh, and it became 100%.
It became a lot harder to win every day, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. For those listening or watching, you can go and look up. We could take the whole episode on some of the achievements Dr. Dean has done, but you're going to go and visit him and get into his world, and you'll see for yourself. But I want to keep moving into who is your biggest inspiration growing up?
I mean, so hands down. So I kind of have, now that I look at life from a different perspective, because I look at it very different today. As we get older, we mature and we look at life different. I mean, my number one, but I just stay right out of the box, is my grandfather. The reason I say that is I think he dropped out of high school, or dropped out of school like 4th grade. He hit the principal on the way out, like he punched him physically. And then he went on to have an amazing family, 5 kids. He worked his regular job during the week, and then he'd come home at night and he'd build porches and decks and houses for people. And then on the weekend, he would do the same thing. So he like my grandfather, when he passed away at 72, and if he took his shirt off, the dude still had abs. He had 6-pack abs at 72 years old. Smaller guy, not super big. But he went through life. He never made millions of dollars, but he had an amazing family. And when he passed away, like, I remember we'd travel someplace. He didn't travel a lot, but we'd go on vacation somewhere out of the state or whatever, and it would be away from home. And he'd find someone he knew while we were randomly on the road. We'd be in a store, we go to a restaurant, and there was somebody there that he knew, like Rod, and they start talking. We're like, how does this happen? And when he passed away, like, there was a line out the door of the funeral home. And I mean, come on, this guy was in a small town. We're talking like dirt, poorish, small town. And people came from all over to see him. So and it was never about the money. It was just him helping, caring, etc. So he's my number one. I mean, my number two would just be my mom and what she's overcome. Because obviously I haven't had to overcome that necessarily. But like, for someone who is who is full-blown alcoholic, raised in an alcoholic family, went into drugs, had a whole bunch of other things, right? And she was on, I think, pain meds. And then she detoxed herself on a couch and went through hell on the detox part, including pain meds, which is something you just don't do. Wow. And, even though, today she has a lot she wants to work on, those accomplishments, I mean, those are personal spiritual accomplishments.
Wow. That's amazing. I could go deep into this, but I can relate to some of the things you said. As a kid, just seeing things probably you shouldn't, right? Yeah. And I think for myself, for sure, I can look back and be grateful for all of that. Yeah, the good and the bad, because look what now we have an opportunity to do for our kid, right?
That's right.
And I think you said it earlier. You wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that, and I can totally see that, and I can commend you for that.
And I didn't always see that, Dana. Like, I didn't always. I mean, I remember in my 20s and 30s, I was still like angry, not angry like I hate you, Mom. Like, but I had like internal anger on like, why did I have to go through this? What is this all about? Like, why me? Like I didn't ask for this. My mom, blah blah blah. My dad, my parents divorced. Why does it? So like, you go through parts, but now you look at it and you go, wait a second, like. Okay, it wasn't ideal, but man, I'm here doing what I'm doing because of that. So without that happening, obviously I don't want my mom to go through hell, but she's okay now. Without that happening, I don't necessarily get to where I am right now.
100%. 100%. Amen. So I'll tell you, that's a nice transition. So talking about where you are now, and bringing in your grandfather's story, for him to be an inspiration to you, I think this is an interesting perspective maybe you could look at. I'm not sure if you have before, but you talked about he went to work every day, worked his job, and then he came home and went and put more time in and built porches and decks for people and on the nights and weekends and stuff. And obviously changed a lot of lives, because look at how popular he was, how many people came out for him and his funeral. And I want to just tell you, like, you've got yourself going to work every day, helping people, as a chiropractor and helping people change their lives, and then come home at night and you're doing something too. You're manning a movement at night and on weekends, changing people's lives. So I think that's kind of a cool thing to bring that full circle and assuming someday maybe you have a grandchild and they can look at Grandpa Dean and say, wow, he went and worked and then came home and pushed this movement and all the good stuff. So I just wanted to put that out there for you. As soon as I heard you talk about your grandpa doing that, I just saw a lot of correlation to what you're doing now. So with that, I wanted to introduce anybody that may not be familiar with Brave TV is kind of the new movement, not new, but the movement that you're kind of pushing, right? So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about the backstory of Brave TV, what the mission is?
Yeah, I started a podcast back in like 2016, 2017 called like Revolution Health, and I kind of morphed it a little bit. And I was just really talking to natural healthcare practitioners and giving, to the public what we see in our side from a standpoint of non-medication, natural, holistic living, et cetera, which was fun talking to practitioners. But at the same time, behind the scenes, I am like a conspiracy nut, but I'm not a conspiracy nut from a standpoint of like random stuff. I'm the conspiracy guy who's like, okay, let's go find the actual data and find like the papers and the documents that like support this, because we know there's something to it. It may not be exactly what we're looking at right now, but there's definitely something. If it's out there, there's something to this. And so coming forward, we get to 2019, and at the end of the year, December 2019, my wife and I start seeing some respiratory stuff come through the office. It was kind of strange with patients, and we even said, this is odd. And then next thing you know, 2020 hits and the whole COVID thing. And without getting you banned from all, platforms, because that's what I did, I'll keep it very, very PG. I've been studying the New World Order for decades. I had mentors who were studying it for 30, 40, 50 plus years. And I said to my wife, I go, it's here. She's like, what? And she follows everything I do. She doesn't study it as much, but we were on the same page. And I go, it's here. They're going for it. This is what they're going for. And she's like, yeah, that's what look like. So I went live one night. Like, I just went live. I'd already do my podcast, but I went live one night. I was in my like undershirt V-neck. Like, I was a white shirt, didn't care. So anybody out there who's like, I'm trying to start a podcast and I need it perfect. I did it with like a webcam, a crappy camera, and I was wearing an undershirt. Like, that was it. And it started this gigantic movement that was basically like, hey, wake up. Our country's been stolen. It was stolen a long time ago, and we need to take it back. But this is what's actually going on. And so we did that for a few years. It's still going on. But it's interesting. I went from there to it's Brave TV now. I just changed it up because I didn't want people to think I was starting a revolution from a negative standpoint. So I was like, let's change it up a little bit. Plus, it needs a little brand evolution to it. So now, I'm on the road. I'm having conversations with General Michael Flynn in private, behind private doors, hanging around like the Trumps of the world and talking to people and knowing kind of some of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And but none of it happened without me staying very objective and like, you can have your fun conspiracy days, but you also have to lead back to like facts, if that makes sense. And so now I'm on stage and doing, I just did a 5,000 seat group. I'm actually headed to Pastor Greg Locke's church in 2 weekends for another one, which I think they have there's going to be thousands upon thousands of people there, and getting up. And I've been speaking on transhumanism and the agenda there, and then vaccinations and all that stuff. And I'll keep it as it because I don't want to get you banned. But now, it's just every single day now. It's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'm not Joe Rogan yet, but at the same time, whether it gets to that level or not, it's, the stories I get every day, man. I get stories behind the scenes. Somebody just came the other day to me, was walking by me and goes, thank you for what you're doing. You kept me sane the last 3 years when the world was turned upside down. And I get that all the time. Plus I get to put, what I do out there from a service and product standpoint. And actually, I deal with people with disease and be able to help them either get themselves off medications, or I get to help them, just reverse chronic diseases. So yeah, my day is like, I work, but I really don't, because I just and then I get to do this stuff. Come on, like, you get to hang out with really cool people. Like, Dana is literally a mentor of mine before he even knew he was a mentor of mine. And I get to come on shows like this and like talk for 30, 45 minutes, and knowing that we're going to impact more people. Like, that's fun.
Amen, man. And I want to ask you too, do you feel like, especially with the Brave TV movement, do you feel like you chose to do that, or did it choose you?
That's a great question. That reminds me of a friend that I was talking to when I was changing brands. And he goes, I go, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And he says to me, he goes, stop thinking about it. What speaks to you? Like what feels like it to you? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, you have to be, when you have a brand, because consider it's not just a brand from a marketing standpoint, like it's a movement, right? You have to create a movement. People create movements. He goes, you have to be all in. Like you can't even have one slight little reservation about it. He goes, when you hear it or when you see it, like 100% you're all in, like a go. And it's funny because in the beginning I was kind of like evolving it myself. And and that's why I changed a little bit. And then there was one day, because what you just said makes total sense. One day I stepped back, and this is why I said I get closer to God every day, is because I went, wait a second. I wasn't even supposed to be in it. Where did this come from? Right. Like we were walking around the house doing something, and all of a sudden, boom, I'm like, wait, I just received a phone call from so-and-so. And I had a conversation with them about going here and doing this. And I'm like, I didn't do this. This is my path. This is where you're supposed to be. This is that narrow path we're supposed to stay on. Stay within those things. You can make mistakes, but stay within that. Ask for guidance. And like, you're absolutely right. And as a friend of mine says, this is your divine path. This is where you are. You are going to do the most amazing things because you chose the proper right choices going forward. Like, yeah, you made mistakes, but when the right choice, the big choice was right there, you were brought back to center. You made the right choice and you went forward in that spiritual faith of yours, that divine path. And so 100%, Derek, like, absolutely, like, this is my path. This was chosen. The brand, it just aligned.
That's awesome, man. I don't see this often with people that I run into, but I do absolutely 100% see it in you. And that is, I think that you're being guided by a higher power, 100%.
100%.
And it's definitely not easy. How much easier do you think it'd be for you to just run your, chiropractic practice and just be left alone and not put yourself out there,
It seems so boring now because like it's so much fun what's fun? It's fun to be on stage. I will fully admit that, right? I mean, it's funny. I'm a professional wrestler guy. I watch professional wrestling because I just I love the marketing of it and the energetics of it, right? Mm-hmm. Walking on stage, once you do that with a big number of people, you're just like, oh my God, it's addicting. It's like a drug, but you have to be careful with it. You gotta be cautious, right? And it absolutely is like the most amazing thing in the world to be in line with this thing and knowing full well, and this is what I say every day. I constantly am saying this to myself. Remember, just follow his path. Follow the path that is laid out before you that makes sense, and luckily I have a wife who is like, she'll check an ego at a door. Like she'll we're good ego checkers with each other just because we want to be on the same purpose. We're on the same page every single day. So because some people are like, oh, Dr. Dean's doing big stage stuff now. He has an ego. Look, see, I told you I had an ego. And it's funny because I'll tell my haters sometimes, I'm like, if you think I have an ego, well, first of all, everyone has an ego. You got to keep it in check. If you think I have a bad ego, you should meet my wife. Because my wife would not allow the ego to come back past the door when I came in off the road. Like, it doesn't work that way in this house. So, no, absolutely 100%.
That's awesome. Love that. So kind of in line with what you spoke about, why you're going to events and what people that go to the events are seeking. I think a question that may come from sort of a reasonable, average American dad, let's say, or mom. How should we think about navigating the changes that are so quickly happening in the world? What's kind of the bigger picture, the zoomed out 30,000 foot view of how we should discern all of this craziness?
Yeah, I mean, basically from a standpoint of America, obviously, but also the planet too. I mean, this is really a message for anybody is everything's been taken from us, but it wasn't taken from us in front of our eyes. It was from behind the scenes. It was stolen from behind the scenes to the point where, there is no following the Constitution right now. That thing was thrown out a long time ago. It's all been subverted. I mean, again, I'll be careful because anything I say at this point can be used against you because of the world I'm in. But basically, The America I grew up with, I mean, I know you grew up with as well. There was traditions, there was family, there was faith, there was, you watch the television show and there was actually values in the television show. I mean, I grew up with Andy Griffith and stuff like that, where you actually learned lessons. You're like, oh, I can't do that. That was a bad idea. Or I'm not allowed to steal. That's not a good idea. And that, like, those were founding values of what we do, right? And it doesn't have to be church-led necessarily. It doesn't matter what faith you are. Like, here's the golden rule. There's right and wrong. Like, it's pretty simple at this point, right? And now we live in a world of TikTok and everything else. And nothing against TikTok, because I know people are advertising out there, right? But keep in mind, does everyone know that the TikTok in China is very different than the TikTok in America? Like, America's full of like there's some stuff on TikTok, right? But then in China, they're only allowed to have educational stuff in China because they know they want to defeat like us. And so it really goes back to, and no one has to agree with me on like exactly how it looks, but I want to go back to a place, and this is what this movement is about, is going back to our founding values, right? No one can disagree. Obviously, the people who founded this country were not perfect by any means, but they founded an ideal, perfect way of living by a set of rules and laws, right? And so we need to go back to that, because what really is built in that is that was a covenant with God, and literally a covenant with God. I mean, they went to prayer to make this thing happen. They went, and sought solace to like make sure they were doing the right thing and going forward with this. And that's why a constitutional republic, is the greatest form of government that's been found so far. Not to say there isn't better, but like that's what we found. And so it's returning back to the family, turning back to the nuclear family, turning back to morals, to laws and rules and ethics, right? And yeah, laws and rules can be broken, things happen, like there's good ones and bad ones, but back to ethics, like, are you doing the right things every day in society, right? Are you doing good things? Or are you doing bad things? And I kind of summarize it up like this. I grew up having to eat at the dinner table. There was no electronics. Obviously, there weren't really necessarily electronics around at that time, but there was no electronics. There wasn't even books. Even in a broken family, whether it was my grandparents or my mom or my dad's house, you sat at the dinner table and you ate as the family that is there, and you talked and communicated with each other. And, I had to play outside. There was no, I think Nintendo or Atari finally came out, but it was like a small amount you were allowed to play. There was no, you were outside all day long, right? And now we have innovation and invention, which is great. But it's funny because I'm 45 years old. My wife and I I have a 9-year-old. And guess what we do? We eat at the dinner table. There's no electronics. There's even the book. My wife's like, put the book up on the counter. We eat. Like, sometimes it's a faster dinner because we have things to do. We have, we both have careers and we have like businesses and things like that, which my daughter's involved in. And then I'm married into an Italian family. Every single Sunday night, Dana, I am at my in-laws' house having Sunday dinner at a dinner table. It's back to the foundational principles of what works, not just in America, but it works on the planet. They're natural laws. It's traditions. It's faith. It's how life works.
I love that. So let's say that you're a person that wasn't grown up, wasn't raised on that, or it doesn't come naturally, or, that may have gotten lost in their life. How and where can they go and kind of redirect themselves and find those values and then instill them and start adding them back into their life?
No, great question. So the good thing about innovation today and in technology is there's so many groups out there now that you can go out and like communicate with and say, even if you're just a newbie, right? And you haven't like connect and say, hey, I've never done this. I don't know what this is like. I grew up with a broken home. I'm single. I'm divorced, whatever it may be, right? Or you've been a person who's had trauma in your life or abuse or whatever it was. Like we're taught that America is a world of hate and that like you can't go to anybody because, oh my gosh, well, they're judging. It is the opposite. I travel all over this country. I've never met a hateful person. I mean, I might meet an angry or like disgruntled person every once in a while, but they're not a hateful. I haven't seen the hate anywhere. I go to a lot of patriotic events that supposedly are full of, bad people, as the media says. They're the sweetest, nicest people in the world. They do anything for you. Go to your local community. I mean, go to whether it's a church or even just a community center somewhere local. Like, go to your neighbor. I mean, I really think, and this is part of putting this all back together, is everyone's been taught that they have to have their guard up at all times. Now, obviously, you got to like pay attention, and you don't want to do, connect with somebody that's not a good person. But the world is a better place than they have you believe. And so, reach out to groups online, maybe reach out to your church if they have functions you go to. There's now community things going on. There's patriotic community things going on. Or literally just, hey, if you see a neighborhood family walking around, like walk up to them and go, hey, sorry, I don't want to like act strange, but like, do you know of any places around here where I could like get some help and kind of get some guidance? People want to help.
Absolutely. Wow. So well said. Get involved.
Yeah.
Put yourself out there. Absolutely. I will echo, we live in very different parts of the country, and I will echo exactly what you said. So if anybody out there is wondering and you've been hiding and, thinking the world is just full of evil people walking around ready to do crazy things, it's really not. If you get out there and, be smart, don't be out at 3 a.m. in a dangerous area. But for the most part, you walk into your grocery store and everybody, doesn't matter what color they are, what religion they are, they just are all there to get groceries, and for the most part, and we'll help you if you need it. So I love that, man. And that's a perspective we all need to keep. So I want to squeeze this in here before we end. There's a funny story that I really need to hear that involves, I believe, eating moldy food. So take it away, man. What is this story?
So I have to preface it with, remember I said I grew up, my mom, a couple different marriages, lots of boyfriends, but rough life, right? And so she married a guy who at the time I didn't really care for, and I've had some spiritual growth now, and like I'm cool. But at the time I was a teenager. I didn't want some guy telling me what to do. You're not my dad, blah, blah, blah. And so at the moment it was kind of like a total revenge thing that I didn't even do. So I got to really enjoy it. So my mom, we're sitting at a dinner table and we're having like breakfast night, right? And so I think there was like eggs and pancakes. And so my mom was like at the sink doing whatever. And my stepdad had sitting down. He was eating, and he worked in construction, so like he was always like working, busy. He was always really hungry, right? So I'm sitting there, and I like look at, and he's like pouring syrup on his pancakes, and this is the power of observation, everybody. Like simply just one of the greatest things you can do in life is just observe the obvious, right? Which a lot of people don't do anymore. So he does that, and like I see like this weird linty stuff, right? Like, and he does, like, he's so hungry. He just like, boom, knocking out bite by bite of like stack of like 3-4 pancakes. And like the Aunt Jemima bottle sitting there in the middle. And I'm like I'm watching like the, the cool, you see, how like it's the stickiness is like flowing down the inside of the bottle. And like, they just poured it. So now it's got to go back to the bottom. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking and I'm like, why is it like linty? I'm like, there's something wrong. And so I'm not eating. And my mom goes, eat. Now, my mom, like, tough love, like, eat your food, eat dinner. And I'm like, I don't want to. And she goes, eat your dinner. I go, it's linty. The syrup's linty. I go, I'm not eating. She goes, just eat. There's not lint. Eat your dinner. And like, she's just like, I don't think she's fully looking at me. And he's just like, boom, boom, one after another. And I'm going, I'm not eating. There's something lint, like there's lint in it. So she like got tired of me, like just totally like pushing back. And she turns around and she looks at it and she goes to him. She goes, stop eating. and she's like, there's mold in the syrup. So he poured mold, like literally like all over his pancakes, and he was just going to town on it. And I'm sitting there going, I'm looking at the bottle, I'm going, but it's not supposed to be like bluish green, and like it looks like lint. And I'm like, I'm a young kid, like I'm like teenager dumb, like, but I'm observing going, that doesn't look right, right? And so yeah, that was and so in my head, unfortunately, I was like, yes, because he ate it. Like, but that, yeah, the mold. My mom was just in town this past week, and every once in a while when she's in town, I'll be like, you remember the lint story? And she laughs about it.
Do you always double take when somebody pours syrup make sure.
Yeah, well,
that
now in natural health, and we're in Florida, so mold is like big around here. So yeah, now we're like really observe the obvious. But yeah, it was so fun. Even looking back, I'm gonna text my mom tonight and go, hey, I told the mold story today.
That's awesome. I will carry that with me now. I don't really eat syrup, but I know people that do, and I will make sure that there's.
Make sure you put it in the
safe.
refrigerator afterwards. Apparently, you know what? You know why it does that? Because it's actually not maple syrup. Because they just put a bunch of like high fructose corn syrup and other stuff like that. Like if you want maple syrup, like we have maple syrup in our refrigerator. Like it's real, like hardcore. Doesn't even taste like the stuff in a store is trash compared to what real maple syrup tastes like.
Absolutely, yeah. They do a lot of tapping of maple syrup around here. So
yeah, nice.
yeah, for sure. That is you know, you have so much knowledge, man. I just appreciate you so much. I encourage everybody to binge everything that Dr. Dean puts out, and
be
to
careful.
make that.
There's stuff on there. Just go in with an open mind.
Let me preface a little bit on that. So I will say some of it is not safe for work, probably
That's
a
correct.
lot of it. And then some of it is not safe for your spouse to be within earshot if they're not totally into that either. So what I did personally is I just listened to it late at night when everybody fell asleep. And that was
nothing
kind of my
bad,
me time.
nothing immoral. Just a lot of stuff that people don't know about, and it can be. There's some dark side to it. We try to bring the light to it, though, right, and tell people how we can make a better world.
Absolutely, 100%. I think that's the core of what you do. You shed a light on things that are not talked about, not easy to look at, and you do it in a way that brings it back full circle. How can this help my family and myself and fellow folks like me? So that I commend you for. To make it easy for people, where should they go to find more about you?
Yeah, the best place is, you go to bravetv.com, which links to all the social media things. But honestly, the best place now, because I've been banned everywhere. I'm a little bit on Facebook, but really the best place to go is Rumble now. If you go to Rumble and you just type in Brave TV, one word, like it'll pop right up and you'll see daily episodes, 5 days a week. Everything's on there and you can check it all out.
Absolutely. And by the way, as a guy that, didn't know what Rumble was and then installed it because of Dr. Dean's show, it's not hard. It's not it's nothing crazy. It's not the dark web. It's an app that's easier than YouTube. They just updated the UI like a couple days ago. It looks great, even better now. Epic. It kind of is like if Spotify and YouTube kind of had a kid. Yeah. That's what Rumble seems like to me. So it's awesome. Yeah. But yeah, I totally encourage all of you to go get into Dr. Dean's world. Dr. Dean, I appreciate you so much, man. It's always a pleasure hanging out with you, and thanks for sharing today. I appreciate you much.
Thank you so much for having me. This is like a huge thing in my world. I get to hang with one of my mentor stars, so I appreciate it.
Right back at you, man.